The Fishing Paper Show is proudly brought to you by United Fisheries, bringing fresh fish to your plate.
What benefits can be gained from going to a colour sounder? This is not an easy one to answer, as often the cheapest colour sounder doesn't have as good a specs as a monochrome sounder of the same price. So in this case I would go for a monochrome sounder. Colour is good and has some huge advantages, but I wouldn't forego performance just to get it. Bearing that in mind though, let's look at some of the advantages a good colour sounder can give you. One is daylight viewable. When trying to view the units in the sun, you'll find that with a monochrome sounder, you often have to cover the unit with your hands, like this, to be able to see the screen, as opposed to the colour sounder, where you can easily glance at the screen and see it. However, a more important difference is what is known as echo strength representation. Different strength echoes are displayed on the screen in different colours. The echoes returned from fish actually come from their swim bladders, so the larger the swim bladder, the stronger the echo received. On a monochrome sounder, this is shown in varying forms of grey. The darker the grey, the stronger the echo, as opposed to the colour sounder, where the stronger echoes are shown in stronger, darker colours, making it easier to distinguish between different fish species. Once you're used to your sounder and have got into the practice of catching every echo you see, you'll soon find that taking a quick glance at your screen, you can distinguish between the different fish species, meaning you avoid the bycatch and target the fish you really want to catch.
Well, the show certainly does seem to have a theme about size this week, and last season was a pretty spectacular season if you're a trout fisherman. Indeed, if you're a sea fisherman too, it was the year of the big fish, and people described it also as the year of the mouse. But as I said before, a few cats went hungry because it was the trout that actually got in on the action. And to talk about that tonight, Tony Ebersole, good evening.
Good evening, my friend.
Yeah, it received quite a bit of hype in the news, didn't it? You know, there was a lot about the year of the mouse and these big fish. Was it that unusual?
No, it happens periodically. People have been waiting for a wee while. The last really good year of the mouse, so to speak, was in the 99-2000. So it had been nearly 10 years since we'd had, large numbers of trout feeding up on large numbers of mice. Oh. And that was pretty general from the top of the South Island right down to Manapuri. Some areas down south, there were particularly large numbers of.
Well, talking about big fish, we have some footage here that you shot, Tony, of some big trout. So let's take a look at what we're talking about when we talk big fish. In fact, trout max. So all the big trout, from this, are they all in the high country?
Not at all, no. In fact, the largest number of big trout we caught this last season came from beside the road, so hopping in the helicopter would have been the worst thing to do. People talk about once every 7 years, but I guess if you predict it every year for 7 years, you'll get close, but it's not that predictable.
So obviously things in nature go in cycles, and it's the same with the sea. And we've noticed that there's a corresponding, when you get a good trout season, you also get a good sea season. Presumably these trout don't all feed on mice, though. They're not relying on mice to get fat.
Not all of them, no. No, large numbers will have, but I think they needed to be in good condition beforehand. We'd seen a lot of growth in the trout the previous season. We were expecting some pretty big trout this season anyhow, and then the mice made it even better. The beech mast, when the beech trees flower and seed, they say after that every year, and that's not quite as predictable either as you would think, but no, it certainly was a good season.
When we're looking at talking big trout, I mean, they look enormous to me, but can you put some perspective on it?
Yeah, each one of those is around the 4 to 5 kilo mark,
I'll talk in old terms so I can understand.
10 to 11
That's
pound.
Better.
Could be 10 to 11
They
pound.
sound bigger.
I mean, I know one acquaintance who had 3 fish landed this last season over 14 pound. And you can go to places like Ellesmere some years, I mean, they wouldn't bat an eyelid at a 10 pounder. So, some lakes, Lake Rotoiti in the North Highland, for instance, is well renowned for producing trout over 10 pound, but in the rivers, in the main, 10 pound trout, it's pretty rare fish.
That's enormous. With Presto and Hamill's there throughout the season, you get to talk to a lot of anglers. What was last season like for Canterbury anglers?
It was very much, that was the case, and particularly up through the lure system. There's some outstanding size fish being caught, so it was a very common occurrence to hear stories of these big fish. And that's what it was. It was that food source, that mouse food source. You throw that type of protein and food at them, and they have an amazing ability to grow, so very, very quick.
Tony, this guy here that's playing the fish here doesn't look like he's sort of on the younger side of the ledger.
No,
so is this a sport that's within the realm of anybody?
Anybody. Keith is 90 years old, former CEO of Colgate Palmolive worldwide. Yeah. He and his wife, who's a sprightly 70-something, 2 11-pound trout, 20 metres apart, half an hour difference. And, he'd waited for them.
That would have been a personal best for him. In terms of guiding, would you consider that a personal best for yourself?
Every day we're getting good fish is a best, Crimpy. We've had him up to 14.5 pound. This is my boss, business partner, Zane Murphin, hooking into his biggest trout, was 11-pounder. So, bests are on the day, really.
Yeah. So there's something pretty magic about our pristine mountain waterways, in fact all our waterways. So are they in pretty much good health?
We're under stress, Crimpy, Didymo, hydro waters, but generally we're pretty lucky. On a world scale, we're still way ahead of the game.
Yeah. And people are still willing to travel from overseas to experience our wild... This is brown trout, isn't it? It's more or less a wild brown trout fishery.
Big brown fishery. That's what makes the South Island famous on a world stage, is the large browns. So we're still there, although a lot of competition from South America these days.
South America's another destination.
And they have some big fish too.
So what do you call big fish over there?
10, 12, 14, 15.
Yeah. In terms
20,
of
30, 40. If you're getting into Terra del Fuego, sea-run browns.
Fish on steroids, I'll tell you what, that's pretty amazing. Well, when we come back, we're going to have a look at what it's like some tips on fishing in the Canterbury High Country. And coming up is Cooking with Crimpy. Now, I have a recipe for you that's a prawn dish that is virtually impossible to get your tongue around. More of that in a moment.